Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished professional from the UK, Mr. Russell Beck. Russell, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Hope you're all well.
Russell is Director of Inspiration of ImagineThinkDo, and he's an author. And all of you know, I'm always very partial to authors. He's an author of a forthcoming first book titled The World of Work to 2030, which is scheduled for release in early 2024. So, Russell, before we speak about Imagine, Think, Do, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So I'm an engineer by training. So my degrees are in engineering, electronics and communication engineering, and a master's by research. I then joined Vodafone and worked in the mobile telecoms industry for about a decade, just under, designing and rolling out mobile networks around the world. Did a bit of work in India, but I've worked in 26, 27 countries around the world, just designing and rolling them out and leading teams. My biggest project had a budget of just under $500 million. .com destroyed that career. I was a telco crash as much as a .com crash, and I used my technical knowledge to shift more and more and increasingly into people and talent and understanding people better in leadership. I was European head of talent for Yahoo in 2005. I was the number 2 in a business process outsourcing business, which we grew, and by 2009 it managed 1%, and my teams were responsible for 1% of all recruitment in the UK. I then became managing director of a £120 million outsourcing business, which I grew, and then was global head of consulting for the UK's largest recruitment company. We put 120,000 people a week into work across the UK and internationally. And I consulted with companies on people strategy, leadership, how to unlock the potential of the resource that people were hiring. And in February 2020, what could possibly go wrong at that timescale? I left the corporate world and joined ImagineThinkDo, and I'm director and joint owner of that business.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about the scope of work that you handle at ImagineThinkDo.
Okay, well, we work with leaders, leadership teams, management teams to help them unlock their own potential and the potential of others. What we do is therefore really varied, but we're acutely aware that whatever we do needs to be more than just the conversation. The important thing is what we enable, what we unlock. It's what happens next that counts. We tend to work with medium-sized organizations because we feel and we have a genuine impact, and we're enabled to make change and help support them. We always start with a problem that businesses are trying to solve. So we take time to have the conversations, to get under the skin, mine and seek and mine for that seam of gold and drive into the questions as to, what are you trying to solve? Because often we find that what is described initially tends to be the symptom. It tends to be the symptom, what's happening, the surface of what's taking place, and it's not where the real gold lies. We take different perspectives, we challenge assumptions, and we think creatively about solving the challenges described. And we're realistic about what's possible, what it will take to solve or create change or start change, and look to hold kind of like people's feet to the fire to make sure that there is going to be an impact and an output. And so therefore, what we do is quite varied. I'm a regular keynote at conferences. We run what we call inspire and challenge sessions or workshops on specific subjects around people strategy. It could be employee retention, employee attraction, the future of work, generational opportunities and challenges, how to hire the right people, employer branding. We run leadership development programs, multiple modules with integrated ICF certified coaching, to help people understand their own leadership style, the style of others, how to effectively manage people, having difficult conversations. We work with leadership teams to take them from being good to great,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe helping a team overcome dysfunction, helping
Mm.
to build trust and performance. We look at creative problem solving, innovation, change management. But regardless of the area, it's what happens on the day while we're there, while we're present, is important. But it's what it unlocks and the value it creates afterwards. It may be unexpected, it may be predictable, but it's what we enable that really adds the value.
Fascinating, fascinating. And you also believe that people are the only USP of any organization. How do you put this belief into practice?
Well, firstly, I think I'm probably not the only person who thinks that people are pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
And it might sound somewhat trite, used, banded phrase, but I do think that people are one of the few USPs of any organization.
Right.
I think if people are in an environment where they are engaged, those people thrive.
Mm-hmm.
If they thrive, they unlock their potential.
Mm.
If you unlock their potential, then there's no knowing what may happen next in a positive way, because everything comes from this people thriving, creativity.
Mm.
If they're thriving, they're collaborating with others. They will take a different view on processes and opportunities, on the quality of their work, how they treat customers, how they treat colleagues. Everything stems from this. And this isn't about finding the gems, the superstars, the top talent. This is about how you can enable everyone to feel that they're not just surviving at work, but thriving at work and contributing. Just imagine how a business would be if everyone was working at their full potential.
Right.
And surely everyone hires people with potential. Surely that's the point of it. But the question is, how are you harnessing it? How are you unlocking it? How are you developing it? And it's said, I hate the phrase hard skills and soft skills. There's technical skills and there's people skills, leadership skills. They're both hard. And too often we have a one-size-fits-one approach, cookie cutter, everything's identical and the same, but we're individuals. You're different to me, I'm different to you. And we need to accommodate and understand that difference, because if we can harness that, that's where we unlock real potential and real
Very interesting.
power.
Very interesting. Thank you. And Russell, how can leaders effectively unlock their own potential and that of their teams in such a competitive job market today?
I think, good question. I think there's several areas spring out, and I'd suggest, in no particular order, a top three for you, if you like.
Yeah.
I think perspectives and assumptions is a really interesting one. Trust is a fascinating one, and purpose. And I'll go through each three, if I may, briefly. If you take the first one, with perspectives, I think we need to widen our focus. We need to have different conversations with different people. Too often in work, life, and play, we become more narrowed. We speak to the usual suspects. There's a reason the film was called that. We often challenge businesses by asking them, don't invite the usual suspects to a meeting. Invite the unusual suspects. Invite the ones who are rarely asked. See what their opinion really and honestly is. Seek out diversity of opinion, difference of thought, to help you see things from a different way, and use that as a positive to challenge your thinking, more roundly challenge your thinking and your preconceptions, because there is real gold in seeking different perspectives and different approaches and seeing things from a different way. Right. Following that is challenge your assumption. If if you find an assumption that's true, what untrue or limiting assumption is hiding behind it? Question your thinking. Another question we love is, what do you know now that will only make full sense in 6 months' time when you look back?
That's a very, very difficult question to answer.
It is, but it's an interesting one, because when we were running creative problem solving sessions, we had a group of CEOs from across multiple companies in a room last month, and late November, and we ran an exercise in creative problem solving, and actually the assumptions we make about things just limit how they were thinking. Fascinating.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So the second aspect is trust. And again, lots written on this. We often find Patrick Lencioni's work highly informative on this. And he built the 5 layers, the dysfunctions of a team. And trust is the bedrock of what happens. Because if there is an absence of trust, and I mean this in I mean this in the same way that Patrick Lencioni does, a trust in terms of, some people call it psychological safety. Some people call it vulnerability. It's all of those. And it's the ability to say what you want to say without fear of repercussion. It's the ability to be honest, to go, I'm not sure I agree. It's the ability, you don't feel you have to hold back, because it will be, oh yeah, trust Russ to go on, he goes off on that one again. You don't get that dismissive side. It's the ability to be honest and open and frank and say it. Because if you don't have that, then you don't get the conflict. And most teams are characterized by too little conflict, not too much conflict.
Right.
It was very rare in a team environment for someone to throw a punch, just one end of the spectrum. It's very often in a team meeting, though, that people don't say what they think. If you don't say what you think, if you hold back, if you pull your punch, so to speak, then you don't have the discussion. You don't get into the weeds of what's going on. So you don't get the commitment to a decision. And because you haven't got the commitment, people avoid accountability. And because of avoiding accountability, you don't get the results you want. Trust is the foundation. It underpins everything. And as a simple example for you, if you find, in a business meeting, if you find, is everything said inside the meeting? Has everyone said what they were? Has everyone got it off their chest? They said what they want to say. Or option B, are there sidebar conversations or conversations that take place after the meeting? That kind of, see, that's what I mean. That's, did you see what he did? Did you see what she said? That's what I'm talking about. I suggest if there's these sidebar conversations, then there's not sufficient trust. That's an indicator for me that there's not sufficient trust in the meeting. Therefore, you haven't had the conversation, you haven't had the conflict, you haven't got the commitment, you haven't, and so on. So you don't get the results. And so you waste time going round and round and round the circle, having another meeting to discuss what you should have decided last week.
Thank you.
And the third one, because I think this is interesting, is purpose. Because I think the power of purpose is often underrated, but critically important. Hopefully everyone knows what to do. Hopefully everyone knows how to do it. Do they know why? Why is their task so important for your team, department, organization to achieve their goals? Nietzsche said, for those that have a why can endure almost anyhow. Dostoevsky noted that when he was sentenced to hard labor in Siberia, he noticed the labor wasn't that hard. Peasants worked far harder in the soil. Try growing crops in Siberia. But the hardness of the task in the prison camps was the fact that it was designed to be utterly, utterly futile, pointless.
Yeah.
So how do you link every person's activity to the goals of the organization? How do you help everyone find their golden thread? And surely you can do this, because if there is no link, obviously question why. But if after questioning why you can't find the link, then you've got to question why they're actually doing that job.
Right, right. Well said, well said. So I'm going to move on in the interest of time. My next question, Russell, is what skills and qualities are particularly valuable for professionals in the 21st century?
I think, and this is, I've written a whole chapter in my book on future skills. And I think the World Economic Forum has released lots of data on future skills, top 25 skills, the top 15 skills required by business by 2025. And they broadly fall into three buckets. And the three buckets are innovation and creativity, their people and leadership skills, and their digital skills. And it's reasonably obvious why those are the three buckets. You know, they're all jobs that technology, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT can't do or can't currently do well.
Right.
Any job, any task, any process that can be codified, that follows a linear, definable, repeatable process, you know, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, keep going, keep going, keep going. That's going to be destroyed. Because tech will do it. Businesses won't need process followers going forward. They'll need the skills that tech can't do. And that leaves these three buckets. You know, on one side, you've got the innovation, the creativity, the storytellers, the people seeing the hidden meaning in what's going on. We're going to be swamped by data. So people who can actually make sense of it and articulate what that means, the so what this is telling us and taking it forward. And interestingly, you're seeing already, you know, 5-10 years ago, I have 13-year-olds. So 5 or 10 years ago, STEM was the rage. Get your children to do STEM, STEMs, you know, science, technology, maths, and all of this. Now you're seeing STEAM.
Correct.
STEAM come out, with the A being art. And ironically, what you're seeing is the rise of the artist engineers now. Almost ironic, going back 550 years to Leonardo da Vinci. The second bucket is people and leadership, management skills. You know, people, I believe, are really important. They may or may not be the most USP, but they're probably people costs are, if not the single largest line item on your P&L, they're certainly one of the top three. So if I could get their productivity to increase by just 1%, it's going to be amazing, the impact on the bottom line. So how do you get them to work together? How do you get them to build trust? How do you get them to collaborate, to share, to have that environment, the community, the belonging? We're in this together, give them their purpose. And this is the people and leadership skills. And intriguingly, by 2030, the largest gap between skill demand and skill supply will be in the digital sphere.
Right.
Second, and only slightly behind it, be leadership skills. Leadership and people skills, unlocking the potential of the people in your organization.
Amazing. So I have time for two more questions. I've got one related to Imagine, Think, Do, and then I want to come to your book. My question is, how important is employer branding in attracting and retaining talent? And what steps can companies take to enhance their brand?
I'll try and give a short answer, sorry. Employer branding, or EVP, employer value proposition, I think is important. For a couple of simple reasons. Across the developed world at the moment, and according to most of the data, for the foreseeable future, we're at full employment. America, again, results last week came out, going gangbusters, 216,000 jobs created, multi-decade lows in unemployment across the UK, Ireland, US, Europe, Australia, etc. Broadly, it is a seller's market. Anyone with talent is broadly in demand. If you are trying to hire someone, you're most likely trying to hire someone who is in a job. I guarantee if you're trying to hire them, so is someone else, and they have a choice. And in having a choice, people are going, why am I going to pick you? And this is where the EVP, employer branding, comes into play. I think too often businesses fall into the trap by seeking to answer that question by trying to be everything to everybody. Hoping, therefore, that if we offer everything, salary, community, culture, training and development, and so on and so on and so on, employee benefits, etc., hoping almost that someone will want it. And I suggest to a greater or lesser extent that doesn't work, because if you spend your energy trying to be everything to everybody, you can end up being nothing to everyone. Because we're all different. We've touched on that. We're all human. We're all individuals. And if I really, really, really crave community and belonging in my workplace, collaboration, therefore, working with others, diversity of thought, then unless you really also truly value that, then you're probably not going to offer it to the depth that I want it. And I think too often businesses aren't honest about what their offer is. You consider the analogy of a wedding. When you go to a wedding, when I was married, I'm standing at the front of the church. You have the vows. Do you, Russell, take, in my case, Alison, to be your lawful wedded wife, honor, love, honor, and obey, etc., etc., etc. Everyone in the audience holds their breath, and you get the words "I do." No one expects the word "maybe."
Correct.
But how do you get to be an "I do"? It has to be emotional. It has to be engaging. It starts with a date. And you go on a date. You might get a date by going, got a smart house, got a fast car, got a good salary, got a good job, the classic boasting Facebook profile. But the reality is, but I'm also not very good at this. I'm not very good at responding. There's pluses and minuses. And it's that honesty, it's that opening up, it's that emotional engagement that gets you from a first date to maybe having a second date, maybe going for a meal, maybe going to the cinema, maybe going out, and so on and so on. And that opening up, that honesty gets you to "I do." And
what a great story, and on how when you talk about engagement and when you talk about employees and branding and human beings. Thank you. My last question to you, Russell, I want to come to your book, The World of Work to 2030. Tell me about your book and your hypothesis when you wrote this book.
It's being published. It's launched 1st of February.
Okay, so congratulations.
3 weeks time. And I was just writing it's published by Bloomsbury Business. And I was just writing some stuff for them this morning, and they've asked a similar question, which is quite funny. So it's a distillation of things that have been bouncing around in my head for probably 4 or 5 years. So what I wanted, and what I was acutely aware of, I've already said, I've got a 13-year-old daughter, and she's been asking me questions that, like a lot of parents, and I wasn't sure I could answer all of them very well. And I was acutely aware of all the noise of tech and AI, and she went to secondary school 2 years ago. So actually that STEM to STEAM, actually what is going on? What is happening? What is taking place? If you take 2 headlines from work at the moment, none of us can afford to retire. Pensions are going to increasingly become an anachronism. Right. So we need to work to our 60s, 70s, maybe beyond. That's one headline. And at the other time, you get headlines, robots, AI are destroying the jobs. no one's connecting those two together.
Right.
So how do I, believe you me when I say I've become very accustomed to my standard of living. I need a job for another 15 years, 20 years, but robots are doing everything.
Right.
How do you square that circle?
Mm.
And that's what I tried to do with the book.
Amazing. Amazing.
So I looked at the mega trends playing out in the world, as much because they define what's here already and will define what's going forward. But the important point is the chapters, the five or six chapters that follow, which is so what? What does that mean? And I look at what that means through 5 different lenses, what that means to our business and our business strategy, what that means to our people and our people strategy, future skills, and how do you hire them? The interesting question is, we tend to struggle hiring the more technical, linear skills of today. We struggle with that. Try hiring the ephemeral skills of creative problem solving. What that means for sustainability from an internal perspective of diversity and the external climate one, and then how to future-proof your career. And those are the lenses I chose to look through.
Fascinating. So I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Russell Beck's book, The World of Work to 2030, being released on the 1st of February. I will go and order a copy of it for myself. And on that note, Russell, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey. Thank you for taking the time and speaking about Imagine, Think, Do. I love the name Imagine, Think, Do. And the impact, human beings, leaders, what is going to happen, in organizations. At some stage, maybe I'll reach out to you and do another conversation on the future of work, because I think that is something which is, you covered it in your book, as you mentioned, but we can talk about it some other time. But thank you so much for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.